Hello, and welcome to another episode of my Stellaris Let's Play. This is Northstar. I hope you folks are well, taking care of each other, and being kind to yourselves. For those new to my channel, welcome. For those returning, welcome back. New folks, I'm disabled on COVID. Sometimes I get sidetracked, I think too slowly. I apologize. I'm doing my best, and I try to keep this entertaining, even if it's just in my commentary, or interesting at least. Because, I'm doing this to survive, yes, to monetize my channel and hopefully make enough money to make up the difference between, hopefully, when by the time my savings are depleted, being able to get SSI because I'm disabled on COVID. I can't support myself off work, but SSI is not enough to live on, so I have to supplement with some amount of income because rent's so high these days you can't even pay rent out of it. It's impossible, and of course, the pricks in charge don't raise the amounts to keep up with inflation because, I'm going to emphasize this is a system that has no real legal authority. It claims it has legal authority. Let me rephrase that because I'm talking in a philosophical sense. Yes, in the physical sense of this is the law, it has authority, but there's no justice behind it. Much like the citizens here on Anchor. I was thinking about this and reading Stormlight Archive series in the second book, Words of Radiance, and there's a character in it. It gets called eventually the nickname Darkness, who is an excellent metaphor. An excellent metaphor for everything that's wrong with American political culture. Not the things you're thinking, not Trump MAGA or whatever. American political culture has, for a very long time, worshipped law for law's sake, forgetting that it is no real law that is not made by the people with the approval of the people for the people, and that does not serve justice. The system we have is neither. Much like the citizens on Anchor here. They resort to crime. Yes, it's not their fault that I forcibly resettled so many of them onto this habitat that crime got out of control, and there was no way it could be contained with the enforcers. That, and the way I assigned jobs, ensured there weren't enough minis and people were suffering, so they turned to crime. That was, if anything, my fault. I did it because it was optimal for the Empire. To punish them for that as if it was their fault, that wouldn't be right. We have a system that doesn't aim to rehabilitate criminals in the United States, for instance. We have a system that aims to break them, to break their willpower and maybe turn people into career criminals who commit one mistake, one offense, because it's really about oppressing people. It's about keeping the most marginalized parts of society down. And the political culture of the country, if you've ever heard rule of law, rule of law, rule of law, you have the Democrat type people who worship law for law's sake, and the Republican type people who use it as a bludgeon, who pretend to feel the same. For every, you have laws that there are those who are not constrained but are protected by law, and those who are not protected but constrained, depending on whether you're powerful or not. It's not a just system, and it's not a system that has any real right to exist as such. We don't have a democracy even. The justification for such a system could be, oh, the people chose it. But they didn't. Billionaires created the system. Just as I designed the system, and from a roleplay perspective here, my emperor, Archprophetess Mobina, a tyrant, which is part of what contributes to the crime problems in Anchor. She engineered this. She's the reason there's so many, or if you consider the player to be the country ruler, then she engineered this. The unelected monarch of the Lari Royal Planet States in this game here. engineered this overcrowded situation. Now I know I'm going to metaphor and some of you are going to hate it, but I did want to point out I was inspired by a particular scene in that book. It's an excellent series, by the way. I highly recommend Stormwind Archive series. The Way of Kings, the first in it, starts off badly. Some people are saying, no, it's a weak start. First 3, 4, 5 chapters, not great. It gets really good after that. And then it just gets better, which is a hallmark of a really good long book series where it just gets better the further you go. The last book series I read like that was The Wheel of Time. This author, by the way, finished the Wheel of Time series because the Wheel of Time author died before it could be finished. Unfortunately, he never really found his footing because he was only picking up like the last 2 books in the series. And this author takes a little time to find his footing, unlike the author of The Wheel of Time, who hit the ground running and was arguably a more talented author, but died young. Or not young, but died prematurely from a blood condition he had. Anyways. I spent a lot of time obsessing over these crime ordeals and whether it was, from a min-max perspective, the right thing to do, and from a roleplay perspective. And the answer is both. It keeps the worst crime modifiers from appalling the planet, even though the squire jobs are incredibly important, and if there were as many criminals as there should be, I'd probably be running enough enforcers, there'd be only 300 jobs, but, well, it would be a net loss versus having that much squire labor. To avoid doing this, I would have had to dedicate an extra build slot and extra labor and enforcers, and the build slot would have had to come from one of these strongholds, most likely, or this, but if this is less valuable in a stronghold, I would turn it into a stronghold. In fact, I should get started on that right now, actually, since I now have a large consumer goods surplus. Unless I'm not gonna do that Tomb World right away, am I? I've got Genesis Arc underway here. There is a Tundra world and Arctic. Okay, I'll delay it a little because I need actually more consumer goods than I have. I think I traded a bunch away or something. That might have... I can't remember. My long COVID, my memory does not go that well. This is one of the reasons it's difficult for me to support myself from work. And this from... I was going to be a physician. I was on the verge of that before I got sick with this disease. It really sucks to go from extremely high functioning to, you know, not. Anyways, it was these guys I traded the consumer goods to, which I believe it was. I should see... Oh yeah, they have way too many of these. Why did I give them consumer goods? What did I give them that for? I also use some energy. So I can get back over 5,000. Yeah, for those who have read the Stormwind Archive series and remember Word of Radiance, I'll give you a hint where it was in the book. I will remember those who are forgotten. The words of the Edge Dancers. Kind of inspiring in a way. As it should be. I can wait a little on the consumer goods. I won't have the shipyard available for a bit. Let's see. But yeah, a legitimate system is one where, you know, government of, by, and for the people. There's this guy, Ted Sturmer. I keep referring to him. Keeps coming up on a YouTube feed, and he's like a resistance historian from Johns Hopkins who's been studying at the University of Southern Denmark, or vice versa. I'm not sure I heard it quite right. He's an American, so I'm pretty sure I think he's American. Anyways, speaks English so fluently, but he could be. Some people in Denmark speak excellent English because it's useful trade language. And he was talking about at one point how the country kind of had. He started off as a historian of the American Revolutionary period. Actually, you know what? That'll be good. Let's talk about the country, kind of the United States. Sorry, I'm an American. It's easy to get America-centric talking about stuff. Had kind of two periods. The first republic can be thought of as the second. This is borrowing from how we talked about like multiple republics in France or Korea, although the South Korean republics, air quote, were really just a series of military dictatorships that masqueraded as republics until the 80s, the late 80s, where you started to see demands for actual democracy lead to a real republic. So they're all called republics, but anything before 1987 or so was just a military dictatorship and a puppet state of the United States at that. Not a legitimate government of the people. And actually, the CIA tried to stop the democracy protests. Said that, it would open the doors to communism. Well, guess what? It fucking didn't. It's been 40 years, pretty much, since, well, not quite 40 years since the democracy protests found their footing. The U.S. is still in South Korea. Communists never took over South Korea after democracy came there. The fact is, they didn't want democracy because that would have made it hard for corporations to control South Korea and hyper-exploit the population. And the corporations, they brought a little more in line, but they still exploit the hell out of the workforce there. Oh yeah, Anchor. Well, I'm thinking about this. I have to do Justice Preserve soon-ish, but for now, boom, send artifacts to museum exhibits. The reason for this, it may seem, the display of alien artifacts reinvigorates your museum exhibits. Might seem weird, but knights benefit from this. That gives 20% to all science and unity yields from the knights. And their base income, which of course benefits from, they effectively have, or it's like having 18 knights because they have so many squires. Their base production is, if you consider unity to be worth 2 and research 1, which is how the game weighs it for economy score, it's over 300. 20%, that's like 60 value a month, and that only grows as number of squires grows. Over a 10-year period, that's more valuable than something like this, which just gives a little over 6,600 value up front, and that's all unity, which probably isn't worth quite as much as twice as research in my particular circumstances, as I have a lot of traditions already. Some of you are some being annoyed with the Master of Nature, by the way, into biomorphogenesis. I had been thinking I might release Vassal before then. They might go psionic. That might happen. But honestly, I wouldn't have had the ability to really benefit. I was going to go mutation pathway. If it had been cloning, I could have built extra clone vats by taking that really early. But with mutation, you do more, gene modding your pops, and I don't have the society research to spare for that right now. So, I won't get much benefit from taking the mutation path super early. You can also benefit if you add and you have to add a particular mutagenic ability. I think you get that for free on all your pops. But, so I guess you do benefit from habitability over 100%, which means 140. That would add to job efficiency and has a one. Maybe it would actually have been really worthwhile. I don't know. Okay, well, I ranted a little about the injustice of a system that's not a democracy. The U.S. is very much an oligarchy, as are many major Western so-called air quote democracies. Now, this is exactly what, by the way, Marx predicted would happen to democracies, and examined some that were already like that in his period. It was something of a rebirth of democracy after his life, and then it kind of died back off. Like around the time of FDR and stuff, aftermath of World War II, you saw a temporary increase in popular participation in politics and more egalitarianism. This was, of course, a reaction to having crushed the Nazis. And for a while, people thought the counter-revolution, which isn't really just fascism, can be broadly thought of as political right-wing ideology that had been crushed or dealt a serious blow. But unfortunately, the CIA helped protect the Nazis, literal Nazis I'm talking about, from being hunted down and executed after World War II. Smuggled many of them and their collaborators, as did certain Catholic Church officials and certain fascist sympathizers across the world. And so, but beyond the ones went to Argentina and stuff, and Brazil and various South American countries where they formed little enclaves, mostly southern Brazil, northern Argentina, Uruguay area. A lot of them actually went to Uruguay as well. Beyond that, the CIA literally gave new identities to some Nazi collaborators and resold them out in the American Midwest and used them to produce anti-Soviet propaganda. Because in the Cold War, it was a battle between two sides, neither good, but the greater evil won in the end, which is the United States. I'm sorry, we were worse than the Soviets. The Soviets did not commit 8 genocides in a 60-year time period, which the U.S. has now done. People who claim the Holodomors one could say they did 1 versus 8, and that was actually a famine due to incompetence. Incompetence is not the same as mass murder. People try and claim, oh, it was a famine, therefore it was intentional. But that's the same sort of logic as everything the Soviets did was automatically evil because they say it was. No, the historical evidence shows that it was incompetence, ineffective government, and a brand new regime that was still finding its footing, plus over-aggressive industrialization. And yes, some suboptimal crop growing conditions. It would not have happened under more competent governance. It also would not have happened if the British hadn't cut off the region from food imports. They had already done that before. It wasn't like they did it to cause the famine. They would only, well, they didn't exactly cut it off. What they did is prevent the Soviets from buying anything with gold currency. They put a basic embargo where they were only allowed to buy things with timber, metals, and food. And since they didn't have nearly enough timber and metals, it meant that food was the only thing they could use to buy the things they needed to keep the country going, which meant they couldn't buy food because what were they going to buy it with? They had money. They had the old Tsar's treasury, but the British declared that was stolen funds, refusing to acknowledge the validity of the Russian Revolution. It wasn't until later, with pressure from FDR, that the British finally stopped doing this bullshit. But that is part of what caused that famine, because food could not be imported. It was being exported over aggressively, and then the government was completely incompetent, because new regimes often are, whether capitalist or communist. A government that's less than 20 years old is very often not going to be able to deal with setbacks like that. So that's, and there was racism in local officials. Some of them were put to death because they were found to have been guilty of murder, of not distributing emergency food reserves, and they were supposed to and such. That's not a genocide when you execute the people who are killing people. If a certain country whose name starts with an I was executing soldiers who were shooting civilians, we would not be having people say it is a genocide, because it wouldn't be. It's, if there's accountability for the war criminals, that's not the same thing. It's not genocide. It may be, it's a war where there's a lot of hatred, but when there's accountability, which there was in the Soviet Union, I told you people were shot for starving villages. It's just the Soviet justice system was pretty opaque, so it wasn't super well publicized always. Some of these people were just disappeared, and they later archives, when the Soviet Union fell, showed that the reason they were disappeared was for starving villages. Certain officials, like local officials, this did not come. They were not ordered to do so from the top. They did this in they essentially contramanded orders, and for that they were killed. For that, and because they killed innocent villagers by, like, sometimes not only not distributing food reserves, but seizing food reserves from the civilians. These things happened. People claim, we'll go in this, they'll document these crimes and say that's proof it was genocide, but no, that's proof that there were people committing crimes. If the government is killing officials for this, the punishment is death for doing that. That's accountability. If the government is killing murderers, you can't say, well, that country has a lot of murders, so it's... Anyways. Sorry, this is something I feel rather strongly about, because there is this constant effort to use this one thing to indicate that the Soviet Union was somehow the evil bad guys in the Cold War, and it completely ignores the U.S. has done 8 genocides. 8 genocides. One or two with U.S. troops. If you, when I say 8, I'm not counting the Korean War. If you count the Korean War, 2 but U.S. troops and 9 genocides. The other one is Yemen, that was with the U.S. troops, not ground troops, aircraft. The Saudis did that, and the American military helped with the bombing campaign. So, of course, there were other times where I don't remember if there were actual bombs or just reconnaissance, but it was absolutely genocide, and the U.S. Air Force helped with it. So the Yemenis genocide, the first Congo genocide, the second Congo genocide, I could go on. Guatemalan genocide, U.S. aid, which was not U.S. troops, but still U.S. officials helped with that. So USAID, the same organization Trump shut down. Of course, he also helped try and put a stop to the second Congo genocide, which by getting a peace treaty, like, very recently, which surprised me, but I don't think he did it out of the goodness of his heart, let's just say. I think he realized U.S. was overextended in the region and couldn't continue to do that without it leading to a total loss of control. So I think he made a strategic calculation, because Trump is not a good person. But, and it's actually the British who are the primary party responsible for that particular genocide, but the U.S. is still helping, so. And Trump still negotiated a peace treaty. I have to give him that. Doesn't make him a good guy, as I said. You gotta give credit where it's due, even to evil people. Alright. Boom. It's like I can still point out. No, I give credit to that, but only because it's currently on people's minds. I'm not gonna go out of my way to give credit to. Anyways, 24 minutes, and I got a little too sidetracked today. I have been playing. It's not like I've been sitting here talking the whole time, but it's not been enough talk. I mean, enough game play. Okay. I'm a little overwhelmed, so I'm gonna just focus in a little on the things I have to monitor here. Another Corvette. 2 2 more star bases in the works. It's gonna get me to 4 over starbase capacity. The last one's barely worth it. I wouldn't do it if I managed to trade for a ton of of alloys. Is that where I trade the consumer goods? To these pricks who I'm trading. Let's take another look at this with fresh eyes. Alright, let's say the 80 trade is worth a little more. Let's say it's worth 110 food. It's probably worth more than that, but let's say it's 150 value a month. Trade's a little hard to produce. And I'm getting 72 plus, well, minerals are really worth like 1.5 food, so 45. 117. Alright, so I'm losing like 33 value a month for 360 months. 12,000 value that I lose over that 30-year period? Is that right? Give me a sec. 33 a month, so 120 times 100, or 12. Yep, 12,000 value. That's an awful lot to pay for really nothing. I don't think I can get a non-aggression pact. If I could and could sustain it, it'd be great, because it would allow me to avoid a military buildup someday to deal with them. Wars can be incredibly expensive. Like Corvettes are only get more expensive designs. It's easily 320 value for one ship. So it's like 40 Corvettes that I'm paying to probably have to. If I could get a non-aggression pact, it might be worth it. Might. Of course, it costs influence to upkeep the MAPs. Especially because I could open the door to other things like commercial agreement, which is good to have. For more than one reason, actually. In the short run, NAPs. The short run commercial agreements are a little bit of extra trade value, but in the long run, I'll probably turn into Megacore at some point, and that'll let me build branch offices there. I like to start Imperial. It's very strong in the early game. And then plan to go with the resources and the capital system, which includes the order habitat and the extra influence. Yeah, it's very strong in the early game, Imperial Authority. But Megacore is better in the long run, later on, with all the branch office benefits and trade value from essentially bureaucrats and politicians. Replacements for those jobs, anyways. Alright, there we go. The pacifists will be unhappy a little less now, for a little while. I have to assign more technicians for too long. Maybe it wasn't such a waste to ran technicians for a while. Oh, actually, what am I saying? With all the alloys, minerals I sank into that, could trade those for energy and would have been better off. Anyways, so yeah, I'll let the crime lords run parts of Anchor, because it actually leads to better quality of life for the citizens. More political stability anyways. I guess fewer menace because the criminal jobs, well, 60 criminals instead of 100 enforcers. No, actually they have more menace this way. More menace, more stability, more production, more jobs. I mean, we're not even counting the criminal jobs, which in a way make the labor market tighter. People are absolutely better off on Anchor for that deal. And the Empire is better off for that deal. So, what's not to like? Sort of. It's an unfortunate necessity. It would obviously be better if I could run things without that, but you know, sometimes you can't always get what you want. Go there, boom, and across this map. I want to map out all these systems because why do I map it out so bad? Actually, get in an AP. Nope. I actually want to cross the territory and meet the other neighbors. Yeah, I checked, by the way, I only lost like 5 days in the envoy before I noticed I could assign to that first contact, so that's not bad. I actually spent an extra month improving relations here. That way. Evolution, that's a cool song. I may just have to guarantee their independence to build trust at some point. We'll see. I can let relations decay a bit before I'd have to spend the influence on that. I feel like there's something that's about to happen. Just don't know what. Doing colonial bureaucracy. This one works on like, how much? 300? If I just on the knights alone. Next 3%. 9. Yeah, between all my plants, this pays for itself, I'm pretty sure. Partly because I have all ridiculously valuable knight jobs. And squire jobs too, actually. It's my pop consumer good use. It's a bit. Not enough to justify a recycling campaign, though. Ooh, stand shifts. I completely missed this. Yeah, no. No way. Not a good idea. Cool. Running what I want to be running. Policy changes in order. Nope. It's nice that I have less chance of negative events. Cautious approach. I think I'd want to ever go hostile. What would that even have done if I hadn't aggressive? Doesn't reduce my negative chance. All I can do is attack and do hostile actions, neither of which I would do. Yeah. That's a weird smell. Something is cooking something weird, or give me a sec. Huh, roommate was cooking something. It seems to be based on where the smell's localized earlier, and must have done it a while ago based on the spread, but stuff kind of seeps under my door after a while, and it's like it's a delay. I have a very keen sense of smell. Very keen. Thankfully, my long COVID did not impair that too much. Well, I mean, it's not the long COVID that does, but the multiple coronavirus infections. Well, is it? I don't know. Sense of smell is almost as good as it's ever been, which is still incredibly keen. My auditor processing is worse. My visual processing is worse. I'm less coordinated. But my sense of taste and smell were hardly affected. Thankfully, and those are both incredibly keen. My keenest two senses by far. Although I've also had very sensitive touch. Always, and that didn't really change either, but I wouldn't say it's as keen as my sense of smell. 3 senses keen, and, well, 3 not so keen my whole life. Sight, toric glasses, hearing. That's always been a little weird. Always had the ability to pick up on noises very easily, but like really bad tone, pitch, stuff like that. Tune, sorry, really bad pitch and trouble making out exactly like precisely what words or notes or whatever Could be a brain thing, but I think it's from an ear infection when I was a kid. May have actually damaged my hearing in a way that I think my hearing didn't become less sensitive. It became less accurate, though, from a really bad ear infection that punctured my eardrum when I was a kid. Complicated by abuse, that some violence that I suffered as a kid from an abusive father. It's tough. I really had a not terribly good life, but I had some things I was blessed with it. It at least made it a little more bearable. Everything from a sensitive sense of taste that you'd be surprised how that can make life a little more enjoyable. Even though I don't eat for pleasure, even, and in fact eat really bland, cheap foods usually, but they're actually quite flavorful to me, even if they're less flavorful than other stuff. And smell, well, that cuts both ways. Bad smells hit me much harder than most people, but yeah. I guess my main gift was intelligence. No. When I was a kid, I was pretty good looking up through my teenage years, but as I get into my 20s, I really outgrew my looks in a not good way. So I wasn't blessed with good looks exactly. Not past... Some people, you know, they have awkward teenage years and they grow into their looks. I grew out of my looks. Which, whatever. At the rate my nose grew, my ears and stuff. I shouldn't describe my appearance too much. I don't need weirdos stalking me or something. Indonesia is building a
colony establishment has begun.
Yep, so give me a secondus. Do a lot of corvettes. Power projection. Also, so the militarists are happier. I think. Yeah, they're still angry because my naval capacity usage is air quote low right now. Excuse me. Low. I need to at least get out of that range of naval capacity use. Ideally get up to full use so they'll be happy. So the militarists want me to build more ships. The pacifists want me to retain at least 5,000 energy. And they both want representation on my council, which is part of why I'm expanding it. The many demands of governing an interstellar empire. Yes, this is truly interstellar. It's between multiple stars. Like, see idiots who call interplanetary like interstellar. I'm thinking about people think. They'll say, oh, we're going interstellar, we're going to Mars. No, you're not going between stars. You're within one star system. That's interplanetary travel. Interstellar would mean like you're going to Alpha Centauri. I don't know. Bothers me because it just shows how ignorant people are about space science. Ironically, it's usually the most left-wing people know the least about it because I think we don't need to care about that stuff. Well, in America, it's like, yes, we do. And it's not inherently a right-wing thing going to space. And I remind people the Soviets were the first to put a man in space. And the Soviets were very left-wing. It's just a stupid American Democrat thing. And Democrats aren't even really left-wing. They're center-right. Republicans are just further to the right in the international scheme of things. And that's the standard we should be using. Ah, crystalline asteroids. This is not the one in a synth. This would be... Where is this? Oh. An Odegon purity. They're gonna have fun with this one. Let me just put it that way. The Vokine system is home to an unusually dense asteroid belt with unique properties. Several of the large asteroids are covered in crystalline outcroppings that appear to be extremely rich mineral deposits. However, long-range sensors are tracking sporadic movement from several small, unidentifiable objects, possibly spacecraft, in the denser regions of the belt. We're unable to get a fix on them. We have identified debris from at least 2 destroyed mining stations floating in space near some of the larger asteroids. Yeah, this is the crystalline hive thing. That's gonna destroy all their mining stations, although once they rebuild it, eventually they get a bunch of crystal deposits, so yeah. It's one of those events that hurts you at first but helps you in the long run. There's a lot of those in this game. Oh yeah, I should actually prioritize the materials lab, by the way, soon-ish. Nanomechanics, maybe after deep core mining, it rolls again. Because it actually can add base engineering research to night jobs on Anchor. So I really should be replacing this temple with a materials lab for too long. I mean, Uni was good early, but there's a ton of engineering to get from that. And with the job efficiency multipliers from all the squires, the lab just gets better. A lot better the more pops they have an Anchor. I guess because it's getting more use. I kind of thought about doing my Hearts of Iron Let's Play. And I'm like, nope. I thought about doing real politics, but then there's nonsense with copyright stuff because there's... I think what's going on is either there's a shared snippet of one of the gameplay soundtracks that's similar to a certain rap song, or the rapper, there's some scumbag rappers out there who just create these songs that recycle parts of other songs. And then they try and get copyright things on YouTube so that they can like steal monetization. Of course the video's not monetized, so they can't do this, but they have these little fly-by-night studios that are doing the IP, or someone ripped them off. Sometimes the game studios may have ripped them off. But, I think studios put a lot of money into games and these rappers. It could be either one. And one should make the mistake of thinking people will play on expectations. But the expectations is more likely the rapper, but it may be because the expectation could actually be the opposite. Who knows? There's something fishy going on, but it's not my choice. I didn't create that. I just played a game with the game soundtrack. It's not one of those companies where it has like, we use music, but it's still, you can't monetize videos of it. EA does that. And I think Blizzard, but most companies, they either commission, they commission soundtracks for the game that they won't go copyright striking people for putting gameplay videos up on. As long as it's not just like isolated soundtrack. Like, it'd be like a Paradox is copyright striking me for Stellaris videos because of the game music. I'd be like, what the fuck, you know? EA's scum, and they just license soundtracks and they're producing any and then put an exemption to the normal fair use laws, like specifically because they've added this exemption, people can still be copyright struck, which presumably makes it cheaper for them to get contracts on music because they can tell the people, oh, you can copyright strike in Windows gameplay videos of our games and steal monetization. It's like, it's essentially stealing because theft isn't always really in the law. They may not be stealing, but theft isn't always what's in the law. There's legalized theft, which is what this is. It's what is people's reasonable expectations using a product. It'd be like if you bought a car and the car dealership stuck in a clause that said they still really own the car and they could take it from you any time. And then they did so. That would be theft. Just because the contract had a hidden clause It doesn't mean it might be legalized theft, but it's still theft. Just something being the law does not make it right. And just it being illegal does not necessarily make it wrong either, because any government can outlaw all sorts of things that really shouldn't be. Can use the law to oppress people. I'm thinking of the Nazis, of course. I'm thinking of how the Nazis outlawed being of certain races, essentially, and like restricted certain ethnicities and such from living outside of ghettos that they created, and then gassed the people. That's not right, but that was technically the law. There is an unjust law has no right to exist. An unjust legal system that's not even created by the people, especially, has no right to call itself the law, and people go around saying the rule of law. The Democrats piss me off with this shit. And honestly, there's like these deep state bureaucrat types just constantly go on about it. They don't even claim to have a party allegiance or anything. They just... It's the ideology of neoliberalism, which is not really about free markets. It's about the government creating laws to protect corporations. Against often ordinary people standing up for themselves. But it also cuts into, it's suspiciously similar to the ideology of certain organizations.
The special
certain
project has concluded.
Social clubs of very rich people, and this is an organization that actually exists, but it doesn't have any of the nature of what people claim it does, the Illuminati. They actually exist, but they're a rogue offshoot of Freemasonry, and they're tiny. There's probably like a couple hundred of them on the whole planet, and they don't control the world or whatever bullshit. But do they exist? Yes, they even have a fucking website. You can look it up if you're curious. But they did. Came across it once. I was trying to find something about the Masons, and yeah, they're absolutely and they're a perversion of Freemasonry, actually, that broke off. Like, the Masons reject any claim that they are Masons. They're not, and they long ago stopped claiming they were. But yeah, they're a bunch of weirdos who think anything can be bought and sold, but they also worship law for law's sake. The two things they value are money and law. Those, they may not have any control, but their values certainly have seeped into what the U.S. is, how its government is run. Not some weird conspiracy theorist pointing out that certain set of values show up in some of the nastiest places over and over because they're valuable to rich people. So, kind of like a history repeats itself thing, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. Same mistakes, same crimes, the same ridiculous types of rhetoric will keep showing up as long as people don't learn from it. And one of those is the abuse of the term rule of law to mean things that are horrendous. I mean, unfortunately, that term, people who want to re-legitimize that term because it's lost some legitimacy keep throwing at Trump. Oh, it's rule of law to deal with Trump's criminality. No, that's democracy and the protection of democracy. Rule of law is a term that's tainted. It needs to die. It's been used to justify everything from mass murder and genocide, I kid you not, to imperialism and conquest. That term needs to go away. It's tainted beyond repair. 5 more ships, reserve fleet 2. I have to, I guess, name a new reserve fleet if I want to keep the naming scheme up. Oh, okay, I remembered what was in the Virgin mind. Boom, I need to recruit some leaders. I have 7 months left. That's the next thing that, okay. Quinn Brockers in 3. Now they know it's... Oh yeah, and the Arch-Prophetess was all up. These things were all... I'm not sure I noticed this one. The other two did. These things were all in my mind. Ooh, cartographer. Frontier spirit or reformer. I'm gonna pause this for a sec so I can focus more. Okay, so terraforming speed. Clear blocker speed. That's not bad. An expert in geomapping. This leader can improve terraforming efforts. Frontier spirit colony ship build costs. Colony development speed. Nice, especially this leader isn't going to live too much longer. It won't be useful once I'm not doing more colonies, but heck, there's even a discount on new colony ships, though a little late for that to be useful. There's like a couple more to go. Or a reformer. Oh, it's a lot of governing ethics attraction, which will increase nearly all outputs. 1 second, guys. Yeah, sorry, I had to think about this. Reformer. Frontier Spirit has a certain appeal for extra pops by the colonies getting built faster. But it's actually a really high opportunity cost versus Reformer. How much union producing. And with Empire growth scaling, eventually you'll end up with the same number of pops after a certain amount of time, almost regardless, or level out. So there's a way tiny difference. Time, its growth just slows down, and time to add a pop gets longer and longer. So this leader's a reformer, dedicated towards building the society of tomorrow. Let's take a quick look at faction stuff. All right, it's 41, 413, 42. It might take a sec for that to